This is the smallest book at the New York Public Library. It is 1 inch tall. It requires a magnifying glass if you want to read it. The letters are 1 millimeter in height. This is a rare copy of The Sun. It was published in 1929 by Harry Crosby, who was later credited with launching the careers of famous writers, including Ernest Hemingway and James Joyce. Just one of the stories that you can find in a new book called Tiny New York, which looks at the stories behind some of the city's smallest places, things, and people. The author, Suzi Siegel, is with me now. Where did this idea come from?
So I grew up in the Bronx in a tiny apartment, and all of us squished in there. Now I live in a tiny studio apartment in Queens, and I keep my shoes in the oven. So I am used to dealing with very little space, as are all of New Yorkers, and the idea just hit me. Like, we do so much with so little. What if I start looking at the tiniest places in the biggest city?
Okay, example number one, which is actually not far from here.
Okay.
Tiny barber shop.
Yes, that's in Chelsea, and it's 95 square feet, so it fits one chair. And everybody else has to wait outside. And there's no place for him to go to the bathroom, so he has to go to a diner. Right. And you know, in barbershops, you can put your head back in the sink. There's no room to even do it. You have to just stick your head.
This is interesting. The smallest neighborhood in the city is Ramblersville, about a third of a mile in southern Queens.
That is correct. I'm from New York. I had never heard of it before. I went searching around. It's basically this neighborhood that's right in the middle of nowhere near the airport, JFK Airport. You take the A train to Howard Beach to get there. And it's this scrappy neighborhood that basically has been sort of, it's a little bit of a godforsaken place, but it's a beautiful place. And when Hurricane Sandy hit hard, basically that whole neighborhood got decimated. So I interviewed a woman, 93 years old, who left, thought it was going to be a couple hours, gone for 2 years, came back and rebuilt her home from the rubble. That's tiny New York, tough, gritty.
So we did a story 2 weeks ago about the oldest bars in New York City, and as soon as you do that story, it opens this can of worms. But that's not the oldest bar. This is the oldest bar. You're thinking of the second oldest bar.
Absolutely true.
As soon as you publish a book called Tiny New York, do people go after you saying, that's not the smallest?
Yes, that's why I didn't call it Tiniest New York. It's called Tiny New York.
Oh, just tiny.
Some of these things are objectively the tiniest. Like, I know that Ronald Torreyes is the tiniest New York Yankee. That's easy. Some of this other stuff, it's definitely tiny, but I want to hear from people if they know a tinier place for sure.
So have you heard any good ones since the book came out that people said this is a great one for Tiny New York too?
I think the Tiny Topless Bar. I did get a Tiny Topless Bar.
Can you
that's in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Tell me more.
Tell you more. So you can't Google this stuff, which is really interesting, right? So I was calling around, sort of feeling weird about asking, are you the tiniest topless bar? But I'm pretty sure that this one is the right one. But if there is a tinier one, we'll hear about it. But this place is called Pumps, and it's in Williamsburg.
All right. I enjoyed this. Suzi Siegel, Tiny New York is the book. Thank you.
Thank you so much
Good
for
to have
having
you
me.
in this morning.